let us go, since all of you are on here, and welcome to everyone. Thank you for coming today. All of you on YouTube, either live or later on, you're watching this on a recording when you have time, or you're in India and you're watching it later after this. We're welcome. We enjoy having everybody here. Thank you so much. We'll start with a chant. Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Vityirma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. It is from darkness to light, it is from death to mortality. Om peace, peace, peace. So we are going to start. I thought we'll start off with a chant. How does that sound? So we can all get the worldly mind away from all the things we've been doing all day this week. And it's always good to chant to the Divine Mother. What Thakur always said was to go. We actually lost. Sorry. Well, to recharge. Sorry, Swamiji. Your light is shining anyways. So Thakur always said to go through Divine Mother to get to Spirit, have her appreciate Divine Ma for anything that you want. So we're going to do that today. So we'll do, it's written under Jai Shri Durga, but basically it's just a simple chant that we stole from Krishna Das, and we do invoke all the Devis, all the aspects of Divine Mother. And Divine Mother, of course, with Kali, is the creatrix. She is everything in vibration, everything in motion, everything projected is Ma. And that's what Sri Krishna has mentioned. And it is the Kali Murti as well. So she's dancing the dance of creation and all vibration. And within her are also the different aspects, because we, as human beings, have human needs, right? So Ma Durga, of course, all of you who are from Indian background, I don't need to say any of this, but Ma Durga is also our protectrix. So if we go on trips, if we need help, if we need protection, she's the bad person with the sword riding a lion. She looks like you can't mess with her, that's for sure. So it's pretty easy to see what her specialty is, right? So we always appreciate Ma Durga for protection and help. Ma Lakshmi, of course, is our provider of all of our needs, physical and just substantive, anything that we need to be able to exist in this world. So we really appreciate Ma Lakshmi for success, or in our ventures, or just, for a monk would be just saying, look, Ma, I am in your care, sustain me according to thy will. So it goes into different ways of how we are with Ma. Of course, what Swami Vivekananda said, and so did Swami Thakur, the purer you are, the less you ask from Ma. You just trust her that she's going to do all these things, and she's going to take care of you. But it's hard to do that. So in the beginning, it's totally okay, according to Thakur, to say, Ma, help, I need this, or I need that, or, this is kind of help making my life a lot harder. So Ma is our refuge. And then, of course, Saraswati, above my right shoulder there, is the goddess of learning, wisdom, and expression, music, poetry, all these beautiful things. So all the expression of the divine. So we pray to her when we try to have to play the harmonium, or we try to give some kind of a talk. We say, Ma, talk through me, play through me, please help me. So she's amazing. And that's what Thakur used to say, the goddess of wisdom used to sit in his tongue and speak. And he was amazed sometimes at what he would say himself, because all this wisdom was coming from Ma directly. So this is what we're going to do. We'll just chant to Ma, and whatever you need, whatever your connection is, you guys can fill in the blanks. So we'll just, it's Om Aim Jai Ma. We'll start with Ma Kali, and we'll go to Ma Durga, Ma Lakshmi, Ma Saraswati, and then Sarima, Ma Sarga. Okay, so we'll cover all the Devis. And if you don't have that, we can get more copies. You guys got it?
Yeah.
All good? Okay, so let's start with this. I haven't played this in a while. Okay. So shall we dive into esoterica? I'll try not to make this too boring. That's not my aim, trust me. So, I was reflecting a little bit on what we're going through lately and how maddening and chaotic it seems out in the world these last years or last decade or whatever it is, that century, that your point of reference is. And a lot of people are just really, really confused, and there's no place to hang your hat, so to speak, where you kind of have a point of reference that makes any sense. Things that seem to have been really sacredly obvious and true seem to be up for debate nowadays, and so on. And so I think a lot of people are very, very disconcerted and uneasy in this world. And something that I found that really helped me is something that may or may not be things that in the tradition of Ramakrishna have been presented so much to you guys. But it is something that I found to be very, very helpful. And I did give this book to many of the Swamis through the years. Swami Yogeshanandaji, I gave to him, Swami Medhanandaji, Vidyanandaji, and all that. And they really thought it was quite interesting. So what we're going to talk a little bit about are the Yugas. And these are the evolutionary cycles of our world that are described in the Vedas. Now, I know those who have an Indian background have an understanding, or they're used to these kind of ideas of Yugas. But, and even Thakur used to say, well, this is Kali Yuga. This is Kali Yuga. It's really, you can't really do things in Kali Yuga. Well, that was in the 1870s. This is a book called The Holy Science, which was written, the only book that I guess is out there, from Swami Sri Yukteswar, who was the guru of Paramahansa Yogananda, who was very famous, of course, in the West. He came and he taught Kriya Yoga, and he's opened all kinds of centers and all these kind of things. But what people don't realize, too, was that behind Yoganandaji, there was a whole lineage of teachers that also had books and writings and are very, very revered in India. And there is something that is in this book. This is a book, this is the only book that's kind of come down to us in time, that covers the whole of the path of spiritual evolution. It's kind of strange. Look at how small it is. It's a tiny little book, right? And it covers so much in this tiny little book that it's unbelievable. This book I got in 1979. You can kind of see it's a little bit kind of ratted and tattered and all that. It's been to India and all. And when I first got it, it just went right over my head. I understood very little of it. It just seemed to me very, very difficult. But one thing I did get was a little bit of this idea of the Yugas and how he describes them. And what I find is that when you understand the Yugas according to the scriptures, the Vedic scriptures themselves, and not, you'll find that there was some misinterpretations of them that kind of changed things and made them unintelligible. It really helps us to set things, where we are, why we're here, why things are happening now, what's the current theme of our evolution, what are we learning, what is the things that are coming up, and why. And I think that's so helpful right now. So let me just read this. I've compended a little book, an edited version of the introduction. This is not even a chapter. This is the introduction to this book where he talks about the Yugas. So it's loaded and packed. So I recommend, if you guys want to, I'll leave it. You can take pictures of it. You can order it on Amazon if you want to, or you can get it from bookstores or whatever. It's also offered from the Self-Realization Group as well. But it's called The Holy Science. And this was written in 1894 by Swami Sri Yukteswar when he met his guru, Param Guru, Mahavatar Babaji, at a Kumbh Mela in India. And during that time, he of course was just there for Kumbh, and he met this amazing holy being. And basically this holy being knew his name, and he actually called him Swami when he wasn't a Swami yet, and he commissioned him to write this book. And he didn't know who it was. He just was amazed by this being that he met. And he went finally back to his guru, Lahiri Mahashaya, and he said, "Sir, I met this amazing being." And he goes, "Oh, you didn't recognize him?" He goes, "Oh, I see he prevented you." That was Babaji, my guru, my guru. And so of course was awestruck because of course this is a mythical being, not only mythical, but is this amazing, the holy being that everybody reveres. And so this book is actually very, very amazing. So if you get a chance to read it, dive in there. It does talk about all the stages of spiritual effort and path and what we go through and history and all how it's just amazing. He weaves science as well into it. But this is a book written about the path, and this is just the introduction, part of the introduction about the Yugas. So this is when I'll just read it to you guys, and then we'll just kind of discuss it a little bit maybe. I'll throw some ideas out for you to see how to put this in context. So this is what Sri Yukteswar wrote. He said, "We learn from Eastern astronomy, codified in the writings of Manu, called the Samhita, that moons revolve around the planets. It's obvious. And planets revolve around their sun. And the sun with their planets takes some star for its dual and revolve around it in about 24,000 years of our Earth. A celestial phenomenon which causes the backward movement of the equinoctial points around the zodiac." So does that make sense so far? Our sun has a dual and they have a 24,000 year cycle. The sun has another motion by which it revolves around a grand center called Vishnu Navi, which is the seat of the creative power Brahma, the universal magnetism. Brahma regulates Dharma, the mental virtue of the internal world. When the sun in its revolution comes to the place nearest to the grand center, Dharma, the mental virtue, becomes so much developed that man can easily comprehend all, even the mysteries of spirit. After 12,000 years, when the sun goes to place in its orbit furthest away from the grand center, Dharma, the mental virtue, becomes so much reduced, man becomes to such a reduced state that man cannot grasp anything beyond the gross material creation. Again, in the same manner, when the sun progresses in its cycle towards the point closest to the grand center, the mental virtue begins to develop again. Each of these periods of 12,000 years brings a complete change, both externally to the material world and internally to the intellectual or electric world. The last time the sun was closest to the grand center was 11,500 BC. This was the height of the last golden age called Satya Yuga, which lasted 4,800 years. The last silver age, called Treta Yuga, lasted 3,600 years and started in 6,700 BC. This saw the decline of man's finer spiritual understanding. The next Yuga called Dwapara started in 3100 BC and saw further loss of understanding of the electricities and deeper spiritual awareness in man. The final Yuga called Kali Yuga started in 700 BC and saw mankind in general lose all awareness of finer knowledge, only conscious of the gross physical world. The lowest point of the Kali Yuga Dark Age was 499 AD. The current age, therefore, is the year 325 of the ascending Dwapara Yuga. The position of the world in Dwapara Yuga is not correctly shown in modern Indian almanacs. The astronomers who calculate the almanacs have been guided by wrong annotations of certain Sanskrit scholars of the last Dark Kali Yuga. They now maintain the length of Kali Yuga is 432,000 years of a dark age, of which 5,125 have been passed now, leaves 426,875 still remaining. A dark prospect, unfortunately one not true. So when you hear this, it's quite kind of helpful. Okay, let's continue. So and I've just abridged a lot of this. If you want to read the full thing, I would get into that book, and there's so much more detail there. But I just wanted to give you a concept so you could think about this when we're talking today. The mistake crept into the almanacs for the first time during the reign of Raja Parikshit at the end of the last Dwapara Yuga in 701 BC. Seeing the Kali Yuga approaching, the Raja's father, Maharaja Yudhishthira, and all the learned men of the court left for the sanctuary of the Himalayas, the paradise of the world. They split. They said, okay, Kali Yuga is coming. Now we're out of here. Thus, there was no one left who could correctly calculate the ages in the Yugas. Not wanting to start the beginning of the dark Kali Yuga with the new Raja's reign, the astrologers pushed it off by creating a day of Brahma instead of the standard Earth day. This resulted in Kali Yuga pushing off to lasting 432,000 years instead of the correct 1,200 years. Thus, the confusion in modern Indian almanacs. And then he does say this, and then we'll go into something interesting. He said, no one can escape this cosmic influence except those who, blessed with pure love, the heavenly gift of nature, becomes divine, or realizing that they are divine, being baptized in the sacred stream pranava, the holy Om vibration, and comprehends the kingdom of God. So, what does that mean for us who maybe aren't baptized in the stream of pranava quite yet? Maybe don't have to the full. So if we think about this now, so 11, if you look at your little sheets here now, so 11,500 BC was the height of the last golden age. 500 AD, or 499, was the lowest point of the material age. So obviously, if you look at 11,500 BC, there's not a lot of history that is current, that is come down to us from this kind of time, except for perhaps a little bit in archaeology. And of course, there's a lot of myths and legends about submerged civilizations and all these types of things. So there may be different land masses that are current than what was back then. But if you look at the different ages as they're broken down, it's quite interesting. So 11,500 to 6,700 BC, they called it the spiritual age. So this is the age where he said that man could comprehend in general, not absolutely everybody, but as a whole, even the deepest mysteries of spirit at that high age, at that golden age. Then they had the Treta Yuga, and they say, of course, I think Rama was considered a Satya Yuga figure. Treta Yuga, of course, was with Krishna. I suspect this is what they're saying. Dwapara, yeah. So Treta would be Rama. Rama was Treta. Yeah. So Satya Yuga was one where there may not even be needs for written words and written things because people were so evolved that they could basically tune into all of these things in different ways. Let's put it that way. Treta Yuga, of course, from 6700 BC to 3100 BC, the age of Brahma. So the spiritual age, the mental age would be the age of we're talking about the causal world, the astral world, and the physical world. That would be more of a causal type of a connection. They call it the mental, or Sri Kishwar calls it divine magnetism. And he kind of teases us a little bit. He said there's really he doesn't really describe divine magnetism very much in the book. He said because it would be kind of useless to try to describe that to somebody in our age because we wouldn't be able to even conceive of it. So he did mention it a little bit, but the main attribute of that age is something very, very profound called divine magnetism. And then Dwapara Yuga, the descending with Dwapara from 3100 to 700 BC is very interesting in that right now, if you consider we're at 2025, right? And there's the Kali Yuga was 1,000 years between here. So we'd have to go back to 2000 BC in order to be able to get an equivalent of where we are now. And the Great Pyramids were built in 2600 BC. So the technology that created the pyramids are 600 years further than we are now, to give you an idea. That's why we can't really even understand how they did it. It's kind of a mystery. A lot of those laws and those principles are not rediscovered quite yet. But here's a couple of things that I found really helpful. Now, if you look at 700 BC all the way to 1700 BC, where the Kali Yuga is, the darkest is 500 AD, right? So I kind of took these things of the great religions that are now most influential in our lives. And I took dates out of there to see when they were actually created and when they were actually formed. And it's quite interesting. So we start, as I said, the Great Pyramid was made in 2600 BC. So let's take Judaism. So Judaism, of course, extends back further with the temple Judaism, they call it. And it was destroyed twice, one by the Babylonians in ancient times, and again in 70 AD by the Romans, okay? So temple Judaism was the kind of ancient tradition that had gone on and passed down and created from Judaism from the time it was founded. And that may be only, you're looking at maybe 2,000 or 3,000 BC, maybe somewhere in Dwapara Yuga, maybe into Treta Yuga. But after the destruction of temple Judaism, rabbinic Judaism, which is what we have now, didn't start until after there was an uprising called the Kuchaba revolution. It was an uprising that was destroyed by the Romans, and that was the end of the Bar Kokhba uprising, and that was 160 AD. So they generally say from 250 AD to 1000 AD is when rabbinic Judaism was formalized, and the things that are practiced now were kind of created and formalized then. So if you look at the time period, it becomes very interesting. Now let's look at Christianity. Christianity, Christ, of course, according to the Roman figuring, is crucified at 33 AD. What we do know for sure is that the Council of Nicaea and Constantinople were the places where they formalized and chose the scriptures that were included in official canon. And the other things that were kind of from the East were omitted. And they say that the Eastern bishops didn't make it to the council. So it was kind of like a political thing. But this happened, the first Council of Nicaea was in 325 AD, and the Council of Constantinople was 381 AD. So this is when basically the Western powers took over Christianity, the Western church, and basically pushed all of the esoteric knowledge of the books of the Essenes and all of the other things that were, there was many books back then in the beginning of Christianity. It wasn't just the four Gospels like what we have, and Acts and all these things. So this is when that was done. Now, if you look and see where it was done, it was quite interesting to see there. Let's look at Islam. Muhammad's lifetime was from 570 AD to 632 AD. And then, of course, that created that religion, and the conquests and all these things took place afterwards. So all the religions that have come down to us today that are current and influential in all of the Western civilization were created or formalized in the Kali Yuga. And so it's very understandable, if you think about it, that when these things come, it's a little bit garbled, a bit, sand and sugar, shall we say. There's some beautiful things in the Gospels, right? And the teachings of Christ, the forgiveness and forbearance and the Beatitudes and all these things are just amazing. It's so beautiful. But there's also some pretty interesting things in there too. So I think that there's a kind of a very interesting things that you can consider for yourself if you look at this as a template to where, what was the backdrop of history of the world, of the capabilities mentally of the world when these things came to us, and how is it influencing you? And is it something that you want to have that influence on you? Is it serving you now? From a Kali Yuga perspective to now a Dwapara Yuga, it's a completely different world. If it's kind of no surprise that, you know, Swamiji came in 1893 to the West, and Dwapara Yuga started in 1900. So one thing about India, say about it what you will, it is the only continuous civilization from ancient times that exists in the modern world. All of its contemporaries have been destroyed. So Babylonia, Egypt, all of these ancient civilizations that had their own wisdom traditions no longer came to us. So you know what happened in Egypt, obviously. It was kind of destroyed, and all of the Alexandria, they burned the library. An amazing repository of wisdom and knowledge of the ancient world was burnt because it wasn't in the Bible. So it was kind of sad, to say the very least. But all of those things didn't come to us. Now, it doesn't mean that India had the only cornerstone on all of this wisdom. You know, if you talk about Atlantis and all these other civilizations that are there, Babylonia, there was a lot of different wisdom that was current in the ancient world. But you have to go back pretty far in order to have a very high level of true wisdom. So what we have in the Vedas, the Vedas, of course, were orally transmitted for millennia before they were written down in 1500 BC. But what you have, if you really read them, even from the very beginning, the first Veda, the Rig Veda, and some of the other Vedas that I was reading for some of the talks I was giving, it's profound. It's not like it evolved to some amazing profundity of non-dualism and all of this. It's there. It wasn't something that just took them a long time to figure out. And the first earliest stuff was, God good, it wasn't that at all. And if you understand what they're actually saying here is that the true wisdom was something that was really current and understood and known, but was lost. And so now, when we're getting these things coming from India, and some of the teachings that are current, there's no accident of why it's actually happening now in history. And of course, now we will start to be able to understand and open our own contribution to these things, our own experience, and have current realized beings, of which we do have a lineage of people. It won't be all from India. Of course, sooner or later, it'll be, worldwide spiritually enlightened beings that can contribute to this world knowledge. And so, whether you keep an Indian cultural bent on the wisdom, or you just have the understanding without all of the forms and the rituals, that's fine. The wisdom itself is what really makes the difference. So, what is that wisdom? What is that understanding? What is that, right now, a lot of the Kali Yuga religions are basically kind of saying, if you're really good, you go to someplace really great when you die. And if you're bad, you go to an eternally bad place, or you have to work your way somehow out of it. Judaism is kind of non-committal about this eternal damnation thing. But Islam actually doesn't quite have that either. They're hedging their bets too on this eternal damnation. But Christianity is pretty clear. If you miss it, you miss the boat. You miss the boat. So it's very interesting that that's basically the paradigm of our Western world. Good and bad. God's going to punish you, or He's going to reward you. All of these things, and that's pretty much where we stood. Now we have all of these understandings of what is the soul, how is it made, what is it created from, what is its substance, what is awareness, how much is there more than one awareness, is it some kind of shared awareness, all these things are what the substance of wisdom is. And it doesn't have to be necessarily rituals and all these things, but the essence of what is coming from the East is really special. And I think it's really great to know that if you really see this, now we're in an ascending cycle, even though it may not look like it outside.
Right. Long way to go.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, what he talks about is Dwapara Yuga is electricities. So what does that mean? Electricities are all of the finer energies were rediscovered from 1700 on, which is true. If you think about the electricity itself, but the atom, all the electricities that are talking about the microscopic, the atomic level energies and all these types of things. All of these things are just beginning to be understood now, and all of that now is opening up vast resources and things. But whenever there's an advance, there's also a backlash against it. And that's usually what you see. There's a great advance, you might have a big backlash against it. So you drag along all of humanity with you. Because, as Sri Krishna was saying, and Swamiji was saying too, that you have this huge mass of humanity at various places in their evolution, and they're all kind of being dragged along in this huge cycle going around. Now, it doesn't mean that in such a yuga, everybody knows about God, everybody's realized God. It means that there are a larger percentage of people that are able to realize that. But there's always a combination of different beings and evolutionary levels in all of this. That's the whole game of it, being in this created world, and this schoolhouses we have, and how we interact with all those people at different levels of perception and understanding, and being able to take care of them, even though they may not understand what's in their best interest. If we're selfish and we are superior, we know more than them, we try to control them, then that's, start go again, go back to go, do not collect $200, all that stuff. So I just wanted to point out that when you see things in terms of this, it really is kind of interesting, because it just gives you a perspective on the world and where things are, and an appreciation of where, what was in our past and our legacy. And so when all of this stuff starts to come out now from scriptures, and a lot of this was hidden in the Himalayas and in the hermitages and all of these caves in Nepal, in Tibet, and all this ancient wisdom was kept to adepts and students only. It was very closely guarded. If you look at some of the scriptures, there's actually kind of a qualifications list to whether you are allowed to be able to even study this stuff or not. But what Swami Vivekananda did, to his great credit, was he threw all of those rules in the garbage. And he basically came to America and brought the most profound manuscripts and taught it openly. He taught it in Harvard Divinity School in the 1800s, and he taught it all over the place. It was really kind of an amazing thing he did. And he was actually really kind of castigated by some of the traditionalists back in India. They didn't like to see a Swami. First of all, the Swami should have never left India. That was not allowed. So not only did he leave India, but he took the most holy sacred texts with him, and he taught him openly. And that's what he said too. If you read some of the teachings and the interaction that Krishna and Vivekananda had, Vivekananda always said, if I ever found something that was really profoundly helpful to me, and I was told to keep it a secret, the first thing I would do was go onto the highest parapet and shout it to the masses and share it everywhere. He said, because I wouldn't want to see if it could help suffering humanity, why would it be kept secret? And that was his genius. So this is kind of a neat time. And it's a wonderful time to really have been born, because if you were kind of, 100 years ago or 50 years ago, in some cases, it was really hard to find this kind of awareness. And you were kind of more stuck with the Kali Yuga kind of mindset that you had to really break free. What's really wonderful, though, is even in those kind of mindsets, there were saints. In the Christian era, there's some beautiful saints, and in a lot of the traditions, and especially in, you have Sufi for Islam, this mystic saints of Christianity that found the deepest truths because they went internally, they went inside instead of trying to find it all around them. But they were always rebels. They were always not really, fitting well inside of their traditions, if you think about it. They're There's always kind of a problem with this. The greatest beings that were in those traditions. So I just thought I'd share that, and we can chant some more. And then I thought I'll read some things from Thakur and Anandamoy Ma, which kind of will help. But I thought that would just give you a little something to take with you and to see if that helps you in any way. If it doesn't, fine. If it does give you some kind of a perspective, then you can, I'll leave this book out. You can take pictures of it and you can find it, The Holy Science, and you can go into more of the details. He talks about where they're in the darkest Kali Yuga, not only intellectually, but it was human life meant nothing. I mean, people were enslaved and all, they still are, I suppose, but back then it was an open thing, right? And women, of course, the way they were treated, all these things in the Dark Ages, those things change. All of those things improve and change. And there's always backlashes, as I said. It's not like it's a linear going forward. So why don't we do one more chant, and then I'm just going to grab some. I'll grab some of Anandamoy Ma and Thakur's readings, and we'll just read those real quickly too. And then we'll do a little bit of a guided meditation for all of this to give us something fun. Okay. And then we can do questions and answers too. Oh, by the way, on any of this stuff, is there any questions or things that weren't clear that you wanted to, or things that kind of occurred to you that you wanted to bring up? Or please.
So the author of the book, The Holy Science, has determined and is correcting what ancient cosmology was thinking that we would still be in the Dark Age at this time.
Right.
That we're not, actually. We're moving into a more optimistic one.
Yes.
Okay.
And he does give the actual scriptures that where this is, how the scriptures are written. And it's pretty clear that that's what they're talking about. What they did was they said, well, those aren't real years. Those are years of Brahma, or the year of the gods, the Veda years. And that's what messed them all up. So, well, what are we going to do, right?
And then just real quick, that do you, in your opinion, because I have not read that book, but as a matter of fact, not too long ago, Christine and I were actually having the conversation about that, how it seems that, I mean, I don't know the exact dates, but starting from somewhere around the beginning of the 1800s up until about 1930, 1940, that there was just this huge influx of, Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, Holy Mother, Anandamayi Ma, Paramahansa Yogananda. And that's just the few that I can think off the top of my head. And then you jump into science, and you have Einstein, and you have, all of these brilliant minds that, I don't know, just when I saw that, I was like, oh, I wonder if would that be somewhat of an explanation that it's like the beginning of this new era and they all came in to help launch.
I would say that's a very, very good perception. He does talk about advances in science that happened starting in 1700 or 1690 or something like that, where they had some steam advancements, and then all of these different electrical current and the body, they started mapping the nerves in the body and all these kind of things. So yes, I think, there's one of the things that kind of hit me strongly is that there is a divine plan for all this. This isn't haphazard. There is a kind of an undercurrent of and this is what something Ma talks about when we read from Ma. There is a controlling wisdom of control, a controlling wisdom behind all of this, even though we don't necessarily see it all the time. And there are those beings that are charged with the evolution of of this world. And even Sri Ramakrishna's advent, they say, if you think about it, a lot of things initiated from his incarnation. Vivekananda was one of the first to come. He wasn't the first, of course. We had, who was the disciple that, Ramakrishna's disciple, Kesha came to England and was talking and teaching some of the things. And of course, later he became a disciple of Ramakrishna. So, but from Ramakrishna's time with Vivekananda, kind of the floodgates opened and everybody started coming. So Vivekanandaji came, of course, 1893. Yoganandaji came in 1920. And all kinds of people were coming to America then and England and you know, this. It's a good book to read about that is called American Veda, which is written by Philip Goldberg. And he's actually somebody I've met and now I have correspondence with. He's a great guy. He's actually very close to the Vedanta Society. So he gives talks there in Hollywood sometimes. But he's also kind of a real biographer of Yogananda too. He wrote a biography of Yogananda. So he was close to kind of the SRF inner monks, kind of let him into the inner sanctum and talk to all of the senior dev monks and all that of their tradition too. So it's quite interesting. So that you can, you know, that's a great book because he talks about this. He talks about how the Vedas started infiltrating, even in America, like Walt Whitman and all these guys were influenced by the Vedas in different ways. And he talks about how that kind of happened. And of course, Vivekananda really put his dad on steroids, and everybody in England and Germany and America became really more excited about the West. But remember too, England kind of, that was the backyard for England was India. It was a horrible thing for in some cases because, you know, it was really a subjugation of a whole civilization. But it did transfer some, like Sardar Arnold and some of these people they really did appreciate the wisdom of India, and they translated some of these things. And some French scholars went there. There's some things in French that weren't even in English in the Vedas and things. So, and in Germany too, so German. So there was this interplay of wisdom from India, because India kind of was a time capsule, if you think about it, really. Because the Western world, what did they come up with on their own? I mean, being honest,
Right.
Western, right? I'm not trying to say anything bad, but the truth is,
If the shoe fits.
But all of this was a time capsule that was locked in India, and even the Indians themselves didn't know what was there most of the time. Only very few knew about the Vedas. Only very few knew about the Upanishads, and very few had non-dualistic training and all these kind of things. Very few. Very, very, it was just in monasteries and these kind of places. So that it was broadcast to the world was really Swamiji, you know, he was one of the main exponents of this. You know, Yoganandaji, of course, came and brought a Kriya Yoga, a path of Kriya, of yoga, teaching of yoga. Vivekananda kind of taught really through all of the Vedas and Upanishads on the public domain, so everybody could read for themselves. And it's great. It's actually a great marriage. That's why I've always been close to both traditions, is because I love the practical meditation of the Yogananda's teachings, because he does teach very deep yogic principles and techniques. And I love the expansion of my mind when I read all the scriptures and understand what Vivekananda gave us. And of course, the Gospel of Ramakrishna is mind-blowing too, because he says such profound things in such simple ways. You don't have to read a scripture in order to get the real basic truth of certain things. So these are really, really wonderful gifts that the West has now, and you know, to be born here and all that. But I think it's just the initiation too. I think it's just the beginning, because if you look at the way that this is talking, it's just the beginning of how people are understanding the deeper, finer points of life, energy, consciousness, and all these things. And even in college, they're talking, you know, in the universities, they're talking about the hard problem of consciousness and all of these different consciousness studies. It's amazing what they're studying in universities these days. You know, basically it's like going into the ashrams in India and studying the Vedas. But they still haven't gotten to the point, because the Indian genius was to be able to turn within and study and become aware of consciousness itself and explore it yourself, not just intellectually with the brain or the mind or thought, but experientially with consciousness. And that's something that we haven't gotten to yet. I suspect we are, you know, but right now it's still the rare few who've really been able to penetrate that. But it's open to those, you know, their meditation techniques are there, but you know, who's really focused on doing that? 20, you know, hours and hours a day and practicing and getting your mind sharp and getting your mind on point. You know, it takes a certain type of person. maybe a lunatic, I don't know, right? But the truth is, to be that focused on something is rare. So, I mean, that's why these beings are rare. So, but it's great because, you know, us who are having a different experience where we experience more different things and maybe a variety of things, you know, if we really appreciate what we have access to, because it's so clear, Ramakrishna says these things so clearly and easily. Ramana Maharshi, when he talks about oneness, it's the clearest description of these things. You don't need to be a great Sanskrit scholar in order to understand profound truths that you can experience yourself. So it's really neat. It's really neat.
Right.
Okay.
Fingers crossed.
Well, we will do some meditation. I'll give you some meditation techniques to hear. As a matter of fact, why don't we do that now, since we've been doing so much mind before I read Ma's stuff. We'll do a guided meditation. And this is a technique that Swami Sarvapriyananda hinted at in one of his talks on Kashmiri Shaivism. But it's also a technique that I've used for 46 years in a slightly different version. And I find it to be really, really helpful. So here is, in a nutshell, okay, our mind, we basically are floating on the surface of our awareness and consciousness because we're caught in all of these thoughts that pop up and we put attention on them. And so we follow these thoughts. We think that we create them, but they kind of come from nowhere. We don't even know where they're coming from. Or it's something from outside. And we follow these thoughts and we kind of stay bouncing around as a kind of victim of all of these different directions that our mind is put in, like a monkey. This is kind of the way that it's described a lot. So all of the greatest beings, when they talk about the deep states of consciousness, the first thing is it's one-pointed, it's focused. It's not scattered. So being able to draw the attention to one point is always really, really emphasized. Now, how to do that is another story, right? So this is an actual exercise that can help in that, number one. Number two is they always talk also about, so we are the body, so we have to go beyond the body. The emotions, no, we're not the emotions, we got to go beyond the emotions. The thoughts, no, we're not the thoughts. We've got to be able to be separate from the thoughts and just be aware of them. And then we get into what is it that we are? Awareness, or this consciousness. Then we start becoming aware of consciousness itself. And if you're focused on consciousness, that is the beginning of true deep meditation. Going through all of those different stages. And Patanjali described it very, very well. And he gave these step-by-step kind of a guideline of how deep meditation happens. But he didn't tell you how to do it. But he says yama niyama is important. So doing the things you should do and not the things you shouldn't do. Why? Because if your conscious is fighting you and bothering you, it's going to be really hard to sit there and relax and just be at peace and let everything just settle, right? So you've got to be living a life according to your inner moral compass. Whatever that is for each of us, whatever you really believe in your heart. If you're living that, then that's basically what is needed. So yama niyama. Then asana is the next thing. Asana is posture, or being able to control the body, being able to not be tied to the body. So there are certain ways of sitting to be able to make meditation deeper. And so we'll kind of describe these as we go along. So yama niyama, I'll leave that up to you guys. Okay. But asana is pretty simple. If you're sitting on the floor, the key is to have your spine straight. And I'll explain to you why. And there's a science behind it. It's not just because you got to have your spine straight. So if you're sitting on a chair, you want to have your feet flat on the floor, and you can have your palms upturned. You can put them on your lap with the right hand over the left, or on your thighs like this, somewhere between the thigh and abdomen, and somewhere on your thighs, depending on everything. But then your chest should be slightly out, shoulders a little bit back, and chin parallel to the floor, because that creates a straight spine. So this is important. Why? Okay, so now we have asana. The next step in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is pranayama. Now, pranayama, it can be taken a couple of ways. The external way of saying it is breath control, okay, breathing exercises. But that's just the externals of it. Prana is actually energy. Remember what we're talking about in what we're learning in this yuga is energy, electricity is energy. Before, man didn't have any conception in general about what we were talking about. So when we're talking about energies, especially in the spine itself, of course, there's energies throughout the whole body, but especially they put special emphasis on the energies in the spine, especially the Sushumna. There's Ida Pingala and Sushumna. There's three kind of currents that are going, the dualistic currents of Ida Pingala and the unity current of Sushumna. And Swamiji talks about this in Raja Yoga. You don't have to be, we're not going to get into all of the details of this, but just be aware of the basic science. And that is that in the spine are subtle little currents that move up and down the spine. And in the spine, there's also centers of consciousness and energy called chakras. And again, we're not going to go into details on those. But in general, the chakras go from the very base of the spine all the way to the top of the head. And in the base of the spine, when the energy is there, you're focused on your self-preservation, your survival. The next one up is the procreative urges. The next one up is the emotional urges. That's why if you get really emotional, your stomach gets kind of weird, right? So those three chakras are the basic place where our mind's always focusing on. It's either our survival, or some kind of expression, or that, or some kind of an emotional turmoil. And that's where we're stuck, at the base of the spine. What all of the great ones, and Sri Ramakrishna says something so beautiful. He says, when you get to the heart, that's where spiritual life starts. And if you can have one experience of having an awakening in the heart, he says, you see light. You can just, in this gospel of Ramakrishna, you can read this from his own books. You see all light, and you feel this beautiful love, and you feel like you're at home. You just feel at peace. So once you have that energy breaking into the heart, and this is what Brahmanandaji says in his book too, is that when you get to the heart, it's the beginning of spiritual life. It's the beginning of the internal path. Because now you have more internal reason to meditate deeply. Because you're getting something out of it, right? You're feeling, oh, this is what I've been wanting. This is what I feel so right. So getting to the heart is really important. That's why a lot of the bhakti practices are wonderful, because they're putting your attention on the heart. Pure love for whatever it is that you love. Then further on, you have deeper experiences of that amazing divinity. So in the throat, you have the expressive of this beautiful divinity. Sri Ramakrishna says you can only talk of God. Well, it's a little different. When you get to the point between the eyebrows, which is connected to the medulla, that's when you start to see that pure divinity separately from the distance. It's like Sri Ramakrishna describes it as like a thin pane of glass is between you and that. When the energy is up to the Ajna chakra, the point between the eyebrows. And you become mad. It's like a thief that knows there's a bunch of gold in this room right next to them, and they can't get to it, right? Mm-hmm. But you see divinity from a distance. There's that dual experience of it. And then at the top of the crown chakra, the 1,000-petal lotus, you have the unity experience of thou art that. There is no separateness of that divinity. You are absorbed into that divinity. And this is the kind of the idea in the spine. So when you're meditating, it's really important to be able to first get to a point of one-pointedness to start this whole process, right? And pranayama is important to be able to do that. Why? Because the thoughts are all energy and prana. The energies, emotions are all prana and energy. So if you can control prana, you can control the body, you can control thought, you can control the emotions, you control all of those things at the source, at the root, instead of trying to chase after them. So pranayama is very, very important. Pranayama, we'll do some simple pranayama together, and that'll bring the energy from going outward, Because all the energy right now in our system is going out into the world because that's where our attention is. Now we're going to start turning it inward and going inside. Prana will be turned inward for the first time in deep meditation. And then from pranayama, you have pratyahara. Pratyahara is internalization. And this is when the energy is actually turned inside. And all of the senses basically are turned off. But not because you're trying not to listen to something, but because the energy in those centers are turned inside. So you can't hear anything. It's like Thakur didn't have to not try to listen to something. He couldn't hear it. You couldn't bring him out of it. It was totally turned inside. That's pratyahara. And once that happens, then there's the next thing is dhyana. So you have one-pointedness. Now you're not distracted by anything, body, emotions, mind, anything. Now you have single-pointedness. Dhyana is that meditation. One-pointed, now you see that God, that divinity from distance. Dhyana, samadhi, and absorption. So how to get there? This technique actually is a really great starting point to be able to focus the mind and start to become that awareness to go beyond the body. And so we'll do a very simple pranayama together. And then after the pranayama, we're going to just be that awareness. And I'll give you a mantra that you'll associate with the breath, the incoming and outgoing breath. Okay? And some of you guys have done this before, but I want to give you a little bit of a deeper dive into what it's actually doing. And then once you get to if you really are focused on this technique, what you'll find is that the body becomes kind of a numb thing that's not really focused, it's pulling you back so much anymore. The other thing that's important is the eyes, and this is a great gift from Yoganandaji. If the eyes go down in your meditation, that's when you go into subconscious and you fall asleep. So if your eyes are going down, don't do that. Let them go there. If your eyes are forward, that's normal waking consciousness and your mind will be more active. So you don't want that to be the case. You want to just have the eyes upturned to the point between the eyebrows, and then you can close the eyes gently or you can half close them or whatever. Some people keep their eyes open and they can just do that without blinking. That's pretty cool. But you can just make sure that if you put the attention here, what is it doing? It's bringing that energy up the spine and focusing it here. So that automatically starts that process. So all these small little points are very important. And it takes practice. But once you get it, you can get yourself into a really calm state anytime you want to. Even if you're sitting on a bus or an airplane, you can do this because nobody's going to know you're doing it. It's not like you're going to be, It's really simple, okay? So let's do it together. We'll do this together, and then we'll just spend a couple minutes in meditation, and you can do this as much as you want to. So see the back away from the back of the chair so that the energies can move up and down the spine, the chin parallel, all these types of things. Now, when we're going to do the inhalation, we should all hear each other. It should be deep. And it's a double inhalation through the nose to begin with. So it's like that. Okay, and then we're going to hold it just for a couple of seconds. And then is the exhalation. It's double exhalation through the chest and the throat. Okay, so we can practice it. First inhalation, and exhalating. Okay, now when you inhale, at the same time you want to tense all the body. So, and when you exhale, you want to release it. All that tension just go. So we're going to do this 3 times. And once the 3rd time, when you exhale, what you want to do is just let the breath stay and do not control the breath. All you want to do is observe the breath. And this is a really beautiful thing if we're talking about being the observer, being the observer consciousness. So we're just observing the breath, and when it's of its own, it comes in, you're going to chant mentally, so. When it goes out, if it stops breathing, just let it, don't force yourself to breathe. When it goes out, hum. So, hum. I am he. So, hum. In, so, hum. So, hum. And just watch. And just mentally repeat this mantra. Just remember to keep the point, the gaze uplifted. and just see what happens to you. And then we'll compare notes when you guys are done, okay? So we'll do this 3 times, the breathing, tensing, releasing. Let's all hear it together. It has to be deep, otherwise you're not really getting the benefits of it. And then on the 3rd time, just let the breath go out, and then just observe it. When it wants by itself to come in, just you chant mentally so. When it by itself, if it stops for a little while, fine. If it goes out, hum. If you stop breathing, don't force yourself to breathe. Sometimes that happens. You might have a long time of interval. Just enjoy the peace. Okay? Okay, so here we go. We'll start with the inhalation, exhalation 3 times, and then we'll just do this practice so long. Ready? Okay. Inhale. Tense, tense. Exhale. Release all the tension. Inhale again, tense the whole body. Exhale. Release all. One more time. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Just watch the breath, and when it wants to come in, mentally chant so. When it wants to go out, did you guys feel? Did you experience anything you want to share?
Very centered,
Yeah, it's,
very centered, very still, grounded.
I appreciated very specific instructions, and it was very challenging.
Did you find any times where you felt at peace?
Yeah, the very few times when I was able to focus on the breath and the mantra, it's few and far between.
It takes practice.
Yeah.
It takes time to reach your mind because it's always just running out.
Mhm.
Anyone else want to share? If it's good questions they have. Yeah, it's a wonderful technique that you can use anytime in any place. And the more you practice it, the quicker it'll come to you. And it'll be kind of more at your command where you can just find that. I even do it when I'm driving sometimes, as long as you don't get too crazy. I found it to be just really, really wonderful, just driving and feeling peaceful. Of course, I'm not listening to anything on the radio or anything. It's just changing. But it's really wonderful. The other thing too is you can use it to focus yourself. And then if you have a mantra, if you're initiated or something, then if you go into doing the mantra or anything like that, or other techniques you might do, you'll be really focused and you'll get much, much more out of it because you'll gather your mind together like Bujpara and all these different places, or it's scattered all over the country of India, right? To be able to get it into the one place and focus. But this idea of the observer, we talk about that a lot in the Vaida, the observer consciousness, or being the awareness, or being aware of consciousness, that kind of thing. And Sri Ramana, of course, talks about turning, and Swamiji too, turning the attention within to awareness, not expecting something to pop out and appear before your inner gaze, or levitate you out of the chair or something like that. But just to be aware of awareness. And what Sri Ramana said, of course, is to find the source of that awareness, beginning of the awareness. Where does that awareness come from? What is the source of the awareness? And that's vichara. This is this inner questioning of, who am I? But it's a much more subtle and finer way of observing it. And you can't do that. And he said himself very clearly, you can't do that unless you have a one-pointed mind. You have to have that focus. But this particular practice is wonderful because it not only gives you that focus, but it gives you that detachment. So that when you're observing, you're not trying to control anything. And you can just be that observer. And then when you look, if you take that focus, attention, and point inward to where the consciousness is arising, so Ramana said that it's this Ankara, this I am, is the first thought. It's before Om. It's this first separate awareness. So he said to find and trace it back to the source of your awareness. Same thing with the mantra. Where does the mantra come from? What is the source of the mantra? He said you'll find it in the same place. So it's really neat. These are very profound things. And they become very intellectual, is the problem. And what I see, and I've talked to Swami Sarvapri and Nanaji too, it can become like a hobby where you read the scriptures and you study all these things. And it becomes an intellectual exercise and vocabulary and all these things. But it doesn't help you anyway to become calm and peaceful and start really feeling that sense of connection, inner connection to who you truly are. And it doesn't get there. You've never really practiced anything that can do something helpful for you. So that's why when he hinted at Kashmiri Shaivism in this thing, I felt, because it's a very beautiful technique that, like I said, I've practiced for 46 years, but I never felt I could never share it because it was part of the tradition. But when he gave that version of this kind of exercise, I said, I can share this. I can share this because it's so beautiful and it's so helpful. And it could be anything you want it to be, you know. So anyway, so that's that. Why don't we just chant Ramakrishna Sharanam and we'll finish today. And then we can have some food. And there's some flowers here if you guys want to put them on the altar too. We'll try to get some light for Swamiji. I think. Or Buddha also. So we'll just chant the Ramakrishna Sharanam. We'll just do a quick chant to finish on the Thakur. Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanye Prabhu. Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanye. Krishna Kevalam, Kripani Kevalam, Kripani Kevalam, Sharanye. Krishna Sharanam Sharanye. Namo Shri Gurave, Namo Shri Gurave, Namo Shri Gurave, Namo Namo. Namo Shri Gurave, Namo Shri Gurave, Namo Shri Gurave, Namo Namo. Jai Jai Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanye Prabhu. Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanye. Ram Krishna Jaya Jaya Ram Krishna, Ram Krishna, 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 Ram Krishna Jaya Jaya Ram, Ram Krishna, Ram Krishna Jaya Jaya Ram Krishna, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanye Prabhu. Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Thank you all for coming. It's really great.
Thank you.
You can turn. Yep. Thank you all for being here online. All set?
Yeah.